Module 4. The negative list. What is excluded? Most of the common principles tells you what qualifies. One short passage on page 3 tells you what cannot, whatever else is true about it. That passage overrides the tables. Read it before spending time matching activities. The heading is the exclusion of activities in support of upstream and midstream activities in the fossil fuel industry, electricity generation from coal or peat, and those that lead to deforestation. Take the 3 parts in turn. Upstream activities involve exploration or production of fossil fuels. That is the extraction end. Midstream activities include natural gas processing, storage, transport, liquefaction and regasification, and crude oil refining. That is everything between the well and the point of use. This covers pipelines, terminals, liquefaction plants, and refineries. Then there is the sentence that catches consultants out. Activities that are otherwise eligible but support these activities are not eligible. Read that again because it is the operative rule. An activity can sit squarely in the positive list. It can satisfy every criterion in its row. It can still be excluded because of what it serves. The document gives its own example, and it is a good one. The example is carbon capture and utilization for enhanced oil recovery. Carbon capture is an eligible activity in the cross-sectoral table. But when the captured carbon dioxide is used to push more oil out of a reservoir, the activity supports upstream fossil fuel production. It is not eligible. Eligibility is not decided by the row alone. Ask what the activity serves. There are exactly 2 exceptions to the fossil fuel exclusion. The document names both. The first is the use of waste gas. The second is the reduction of fugitive emissions from existing gas infrastructure. Those 2 exist because both reduce emissions from infrastructure that already exists without extending or enabling extraction. Note the word existing in the second exception. It is doing work. The second exclusion is electricity generation from coal or peat. It is stated plainly. There is no threshold. There is no efficiency test that rescues it. Elsewhere, the document confirms that mines currently producing coal are ineligible. The third exclusion covers deforestation. Activities that lead directly to deforestation are ineligible. Activities where it is feasible to assess indirect deforestation over time are also ineligible. This applies other than small-scale tree clearance. 2 phrases in that sentence matter on a live assignment. Indirectly, where feasible to assess, means looking beyond the immediate site if assessment is practicable. Over time means the test is not limited to what happens during construction. Beyond that passage, individual rows carry their own exclusions. They are easy to miss because they sit inside criteria that might be skimmed. First-generation liquid biofuels shall be excluded. This is unless they are sourced from waste or from biomass meeting specified criteria, demonstrated through internationally accepted sustainability certification, and not interfering with food security. Policy operations that largely support activities not eligible under the common principles are themselves not eligible. A reform program cannot be counted merely because it contains a climate-related action if the bulk of what it supports is ineligible. Now there is a distinction the document draws explicitly. Getting it wrong changes which criteria are applied. Greenfield activities are projects in new sites. They are also projects in existing facilities where the vast majority of plant and equipment is new. In the case of existing facilities, all the critical items of equipment are decommissioned. This definition also covers projects that primarily acquire and deploy new appliances or equipment. Brownfield activities are projects that modify existing facilities, equipment, appliances, systems, or processes. Where a whole facility dedicated to the same activity is gradually replaced or retrofitted over a longer period, that may be treated as a series of brownfield projects. The common principles distinguish these 2, where eligibility and criteria differ. Several tables carry separate rows for each. Table 6 alone has Greenfield water as a distinct entry. It has Greenfield projects. It has brownfield energy. And it has brownfield projects. Picking the wrong one means testing an activity against the wrong criteria. It means reaching an answer that cannot be defended. The document is explicit about why Greenfield criteria exist at all. They exist to help prevent a long-term lock-in of high greenhouse gas emission infrastructure and activities. This brings us to lock-in. It is the disqualifier that runs through the whole document. It appears in the eligibility principles for transitional activities. It appears again for enabling activities. The words are the same in both places. The rule is to not lead to a lock-in of emission-intensive assets that is inconsistent with the long-term goal of net zero emissions. The background section makes the reasoning plain. Updating the principles involved avoiding identifying as climate mitigation finance certain activities that, despite reducing emissions in the short term, risk locking in emissive technologies over long periods and run counter to the structural changes needed. An activity that cuts emissions today can still fail. Short-term reduction is not the test. Consistency with a net zero trajectory is the test. Finally, there is one boundary that prevents a serious misreading of everything above. Committing to the common principles does not exclude the financing of activities that are not compliant with their criteria. The common principles are a tracking and reporting methodology. They are not a lending policy. They are not an exclusion list for investment. They are not a judgment about whether a project should proceed. A bank may finance an excluded activity for entirely sound reasons. It simply does not report that finance as climate mitigation finance. A 0 in the climate column is a factual reporting outcome. It is not a criticism of the project. Stating this clearly to a client who is disappointed by the number is part of the job. Record every exclusion applied with the same care as an inclusion. A row marked excluded with the reason and the source is evidence that a component was screened. A component that simply never appears looks like an oversight. A reviewer cannot tell the difference. Module 5 turns to adaptation. There is no list at all there.